Okay. Well, I was ready to change gears at this time and go through the members of your brothers and sisters and talk about each one of them a little bit. Okay.
Let's start with the oldest.
That's what I did, yeah. And the tape's probably going to run out as soon as we start up. But we'll try it. So I wrote down, Uncle Wiley was the oldest child and was taking care of Louberger Place when we came back from to North Carolina. He had studied agriculture at NC State, graduating in the class in 1918, and had expected to run the farm for his father, like you told about before. But so much family wealth was lost during the Depression that there was very little farm to run, and Wiley was always bitter about this. How had he spent his life?
Well, he never did get married. He didn't ever feel like he could support a family. I don't believe he did. He was very ambitious. He had that squirrel fever one time. I've often wondered whether that had anything to do with his ambition or not. I don't know what you call that fever, but he was cleaning squirrels, and when he got that disease, and it was back when we didn't have penicillin, it was starting, and each doctor couldn't have any, but there was something like that somebody had that would cost $120, but they didn't have it one dozen. They felt like somebody else needed it worse than what they did. So he just had to bear it out, as far as I know. But I often wonder whether that didn't have something to do with his ambition.
He was in the military. He served out in the Midwest.
Yeah, in World War II.
I suppose.
World War II. While they were in the Army, and at that time, King was in defense work in Columbus, Ohio, and I guess I was in defense too in Columbus, Ohio by that time. With Hal Plunk, whose husband was in service then too. He ended up being a colonel, I believe.
So think of Wiley as being at home at Louberger Place if he most of all those years.
All those years, and then at last, when King had gone and we had gone, I just left Wiley and Mama, and Wiley took care of Mama, and all those years, if it hadn't been for Wiley keeping the home up, Mama would have had to go to our nursing home, and she would have got unhappy. I'll tell you that.
Okay, we're starting tape 4 of our family history videos with Francis Fisher, and today is Thursday, August 8th, 2002. And we're talking about each of your brothers and sisters. We talked about Uncle Wiley as the oldest now. It's Bascom Leonard Umberger Jr., known as Pap. And I never met him because he died in 1951. He had attended Trinity College, now Duke University, and was, if I understand it right, within months of graduation when he left school and came home at the request of Jenny Bell to take over the family business because V.L. Umberger was incapacitated by his illness. What did Pap do to save what he could of the family wealth? So you can also just talk about Pap too, but that was kind of the way I remember him when he's older.
I remember Pap as how he had my dad's business mind, and when Mama called him home from college, the family was in such financial as during the Depression that we almost lost our home. We did lose one farm because you couldn't pay the
property tax?
Yeah, I forgot what it was, but
school tax?
Huh?
The school tax, you said. Property tax.
Oh yeah, school tax and draining the creek and all that. Anybody that owned land, you had a lot of extra expenses, and but Pap just invented different ways and you couldn't borrow from the bank because we had a pretty bad reputation there. And during the Depression, when it was really bad, but he invented different ways to make some money. Of course, we had some houses that we rented at that time, and he started building houses of his own, and he'd build it on land that we already had, you know, and finally he developed the old farm that that I grew up in. It was in a very, you know, prosperous place close to the Highway 29, and so it was a lot of work and a lot of patience to build those roads. You had to build those streets yourself and get them up to a certain condition before they'd come in and pave them and really make nice streets out of them. But he named all those streets, and one of those streets back there that used to be in the pasture where we played and everywhere was the Easy Street. Now, and eventually, King and Wiley both built houses on the Easy Street. But there were some old politic games, and some of those, like Madeline Hawks, Pap would fill his car full of any of the stuff like that and maybe go to Florida. He'd pay his way with selling those things on the way. Well, at that time, when Pap and the boys were growing up, they were hard. Papa saw that they were kept home with hard work, so they had the dairy and the chicken farm, and I don't know, and the farm, and this and that and the other. So naturally, they got big allowances. Well, Wiley and Roy just fluffed theirs away, but Pap always saved his. And he was still a teenager when Papa helped him to buy a house in Concord that he rented out. And of course he got that money. But as he's growing up, I think Wiley and Roy just kind of picked on Pap in a way, because Wiley always laughed about when they get Pap's goat. He said, well, I'm going to tell my daddy on you. Of course, he was the daddy of all of them, but he's going to tell his daddy. He's talking to them, too, you know. I thought that was always funny. I'm going to tell my daddy on you. What else?
Well, you've often told me how Pap would dress real fancy and unusual and different from time to time.
Well, for some reason or other, I think he liked to stand out in the crowd for some way or other. And talking about dressing, he was known for his dressing. He didn't have just a tailored suit made. He had the tailored suit made and the overcoat to go with it, and he had many of them. He was known for his good dresser, and at different times he'd have a goatee to attract attention, or he wore a derby. At different times, that's the things that he did, made people remember that he'd seen him, you know, so forth.
Now, I remember when I was even in college age, there was a log cabin that was close by the Lou Burger place that was called, that was Pap's cabin, although I only went in it once and it was rotten and falling down. But when I went in, it was looked like a kind of hunting lodge, but it was full of all kinds of interesting things, furniture and slot machines or games, and I always wondered what he was like. That he would was that where he hang out with his buddies?
That's exactly it. He got with a bunch of Kannapolis bunch. It was the wrong crowd. They started drinking, and it just got him. He was an alcoholic, and that's finally it killed him. But going back to the cabin, see, we had a lot of antiques, like carving utensils and grandfather's clock, things like that we didn't want at home anymore. Well, he collected them and took them all over there. So eventually we lost all of the little antiques types of that type, because when Wiley sold the thing, he just sold it with our antiques and everything with it, you see. But it eventually burned or something, I'm not sure. But it was back in the back of our land over there. And it was his hangout. Mm-hmm. And he'd let a lot of people come and have parties there and so forth.
So one time it was all by itself, but when I saw it, it was there like in a whole row of houses, like it was another house. It just was a log cabin.
Some more Pap's way of making money, selling the lots, and so he might have built some of those himself because he kind of went into building houses and cheap enough that poor people could buy them back then, and he'd let them pay him so much a month to pay for their houses.
Now,
and he encouraged other people, once they got a lot paid for, to buy another lot. That was his way of teaching other people to save money. I remember one person telling me that he taught him how to do things like that.
Hmm. Well, you always told a story about either Pap or your father developing land around the underpass on 29 and then having a contest to name it.
Oh yeah, that was back when my dad was really active. That around the underpass there on 29, the highway that went by home, the underpass, when they built that underpass, and it had the road to go a different way. That meant that Papa, there was a place before you got to the underpass that he could buy farms around there. He knew he had some of it, but he bought Mr. Kless's and some of those others, and had a big land sale back then. And he hired the Penny Brothers as auctioneers, which was very, you know, pretty high for that. And at that time, the new cars were a T-model Ford. Well, so he bought a new T-model Ford to give to the lucky number. And, well, I remember us getting all ready to, I was probably 6 years old then, but I was a tomboy. And so he hired all the friends around to get ready for the trees. They had to whitewash them up about 4 feet from the bottom. Well, I remember working with one of those Whittington boys. He was a tenant. And, well, anyway, I helped to whitewash and so forth. But that was just down my alley exactly, you know, to do things like that. And I remember the Whittington boy that I was working with, he chewed tobacco. So I talked him into let me try that tobacco. And I can remember now him telling me, now don't you swallow that. Don't you swallow any of that. And I didn't. But that was my first experience in chewing tobacco.
Did you like it?
No, I don't think, no, I didn't like it. But anyway, he had the sale, and well, before he had the sale, he had a contest to name the place. And whoever name he chose, he gave him something real nice. It might have been an amount of money, I don't know what it was. But he had that contest first, and the name he picked was Parkwood. That was the name of that development.
And still,
of course, there was very few houses on it at that time, but you'll see it now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how about the drawing for the car?
Oh yeah, and of course the tickets had a number on it, I guess, and so he had some little child to draw the number out, and it just happened that she drew out one of our tenants' names. Well, I guess a lot of people thought that was Frema, but it wasn't. But Papa paid cash for that car back from the tenant, and that was at the time Lula was going to go to Concord to high school. So that was her car to go to high school with.
And that was back in the 20s.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to Maribelle. Now, Maribelle was the oldest girl, and she helped raise the younger children. What do you remember about this?
Well, yeah, Maribelle was I call it a teacher, I don't know. But little things like manners and stuff like that, Maribelle was good at. And all our life, even when Ruth and I, it was time for us to go to college, there wasn't any money, but Maribelle found a way to send us and encourage us and make us go, you see. Mm-hmm. If it hadn't been for Maribelle, Ruth or I, neither one probably ever gone to college.
Well, tell some more about how that happened, because you told me about that recently, and it was very interesting about how Maribelle, you had to go live with her and stuff.
Oh, yeah, well, see, when I finished high school in '33, there wasn't any money to go to college. So I went, see, Maribelle and Stanley were living in
Galax?
Christiansburg, I believe, at that time. Well, anyway, I went to live with them the school year and took a little business course at their high school. What do you call it when you continue?
You called it postgraduate work.
Yeah, a little postgraduate work. Well, I'd always been a basketball player, so add that, I got to play another year of basketball, and that was fun. So I don't know whether I've told you before, but in high school, before my friend Faye Laudiker and I, before we even got to high school, there wasn't enough of high school girls to have a team, so they invited us to play with them. Of course, we played outdoors, and skinned up our knees and all. But later on, they had a place in Concord where all the county basketball teams, we played every Friday night down in Concord at the YMCA's gymnasium. And that was quite a big thing for us. And at the end of the year, they had a big thing, you know, and voted on the best physique and all this and that and the other. I won't tell you what I got, but I got some of them. Mm-hmm. But that was all 5 high schools in Cabarrus County, you know, that did that. I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. So Maribelle's helping you go to college now.
Oh, yeah. Well, to begin with, she figured, see, Ruth's older than me, and Ruth thought she wanted to be a nurse, but she entered the University of Virginia Hospital as a nurse, but it didn't work out. She was too young to leave home to begin with, and the nurses' school at that time was a bunch of rough women. So she finally, Stanley and Maribelle went to see her, and they finally brought her home because she was very unhappy. Well, then, what was Ruth to do? And Maribelle figured, see, at that time, Lula and Maribelle and Anita were teaching school. They weren't making much money, but Maribelle talked them into each month to put $15 into Ruth's college. And that's how she got through 2 years of school, of college, and then she taught up in Burkesville, West Virginia. And she got up there with some of our Papa's relatives, the Grievers, which was good. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, does that tell how you got to college? That was helping Ruth.
Oh.
But they were
well, finally, see, I took that postgraduate work, and so the next year, Maribelle pushed me. So I enrolled in I think it was called State Teachers College, Harrisonburg State Teachers College at that time, I'm not sure. but I thought I was going to major in physical education. Is that already been today? No.
You said that, but
Well, I want to tell about President Duke.
yeah, you did that.
Yeah, I've already done it.
You already did that, yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, Maribelle and Stanley got me all enrolled and all of that, but the money was to. At first, we thought we could register as a Virginia resident. See, that was a state school, and we thought we could save by that, but I don't know. They went back and checked that my mother still lived in North Carolina, so that was away with that. But at that time, it was after the war when they. I said, no, it wasn't after the war. It was during the Depression when the government had all these projects like CCC and stuff like that. Well, there was one of them, I don't remember the name of it, that when I was in school, if a teacher would let me help them with something. And so Stanley got me into that, and that helped with the money too a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But we were always behind in getting the money in, but it eventually lasted. But I had appendicitis first year. Have I already got that in there? Yeah, okay.
So kind of the conclusion that I thought I had before was that if it wasn't for Maribelle and Stanley, you would have had a tough time going to college.
Yeah, I probably would have never gone. Or Ruth, either one.
Mm-hmm.
Probably would have never gone.
What?
And of course now, see, and back then, you went to school and you took your trunk. And you came home at the end of the year and you brought your trunk home. Well, I had a trunk. But see, Maribelle and Stanley lived close enough that, say, Thanksgiving would come along, I'd go to their house. They'd bring me to their house, you see.
Mm-hmm.
That made it more convenient.
What kind of characteristics do you think most about Maribelle?
As a very encouraging. Very encouraging. She liked to help when she could, but she, as King says, but she'll help you, but you won't let you forget it that she helped you. Yeah. Well, see, actually, she was the oldest girl. Well, you see how many years different would be in her when I was a baby.
Yeah, 11 years. I guess.
Yeah, I probably already told you about the Maribelle and raising the kids.
Well, I remember you talking about she always had one of the kids, she'd always hold them.
Yeah, she always had one baby on her hip, and we laughed and told her she's going to be lopsided when she's grown.
Mm-hmm. But she liked it that way, I guess.
Yeah, she liked to help. Of course, that was their job back then.
Mm-hmm.
Mama was sewing all that time, and they all had to do the housework and stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What was I telling?
Well, that's about Maribelle. We can go on to Roy.
Now, Roy.
Let me read my part here because I won't ever get it in.
Okay.
Because I never knew Roy because he died in 1936.
At 30 years. He was 30 years old.
And you often talk about his personality and how well liked he was.
Yeah. He and Lula both had a wonderful personality. Everybody liked them. They liked to tell stories and so forth. And but he was stubborn. Woo! He was stubborn, and of course, my dad's stubborn, and that didn't go together. Every time. At that time, the photographers came through the country to take pictures and so forth, and so Papa liked to take the whole family. Sometimes we'd get a different place out in the yard, try to light up. Well, in the meantime, Roy'd always do something to aggravate Papa, so he'd send him to the house. He'd send him to the house, and then he wouldn't be in the family picture, you see. But he had a beautiful voice, too. And, of course, that was in the time we did have radio, and we had what we called Victrola, where we played records and all. And in college, he went to Duke, too. At that time, Anita and Pap and Roy, all of them were at Duke University. And, well, anyway, he was the fraternity type of person. He was, I don't know what you have in mind, what a fraternity type of boy is, but they believe in good time. Whether you could pay for it or not, they borrow from each other and get it any way they could if they needed something for something. Well, he was always after Anita for some of her money. She was a Duke too, you know. And I don't know, but he had a lot of fraternity boys. I remember, you know, they'd have all the modern records of the foxtrot and the waltzes and all that. And he'd bring a bunch home for us. That probably halfway worn out. But
he was a wrestler too.
Oh yeah, he was very strong, very, very strong. In fact, when he was so sick and his at Duke Hospital and just barely living, I remember Ruth writing me and saying that she'd write me to tell me, you know, how he was doing and all, and he was just barely living. She said, it's his strong heart that keeps him going. His heart it kept him alive when it shouldn't have been, you know. But anyway, he was a wrestler in college, and of course the team would go all over the United States as a wrestling team. And he was kind of a champion too. But anyway, I remember one time the wrestling team had been way out west or something, but when they came back, he and some friends came to our house, and he brought me a white rat. He had it in his pocket. He brought me a white rat. Well, I kept it in a cage in the house for a long time. His name was Billy, and well, Billy got loose in the house somewhere. He had disappeared for a long time, but for some reason or other, we found out he was in the cellar. So we started putting food at a certain place. So we kept food there at a certain place at the top of the steps going down into the cellar. And oh, he was still my pet, you know, and all. But one night we heard a squealing, oh, terrible noise. And we got down there, but the cat had crippled it so bad it was too late. There went my Billy. Yeah.
What can you remember about Anita when she was young? And one thing you could tell about her long hair and when she got it cut.
Okay. I'm going to start?
Yep.
Well, when we were growing up, we paired to do the work around there. Of course, the boys did all the outside work, but the girls paired. Anita and Lula paired, and Ruth and I paired, and Lula ended up being most of the cook, and she was a good cook, I'll tell you. And it ended up that Anita wasn't much of a cook, but she's a pretty good housekeeper. And what was I going from there?
About her playing music by ear.
Oh, yeah. She loved to play the piano, and she could play by ear. And at that time, maybe one or two popular songs would come out each year, and they'd get the sheet music for it. But she'd hear it beforehand, and she'd come home and she'd try and try over and over until she learned to play that thing without the music.
Tell about her long hair and how she got it cut.
Oh yeah, Anita and Francis wore long hair, long curls, for a long time. Anita just hated hers, but Papa wouldn't let her cut it. So finally, I don't know, she's probably Well, I'm pretty sure she was in high school before Papa would give her permission to cut it. And when he did, she rode a bicycle all the way down to Concord to get it cut. And she was happy after that. And
you told me she was in the first graduating class that had at Duke that had women in it.
Yeah, that's well. At one time, there were 3 in the family at Duke University. Pap was the first one, Roy was there, and Anita, all at one time. And Anita was in the first graduating class of Duke University when they had women, because back when Pap started, of course it was just men, and it was Trinity College at that time.
Okay. Now, I remember, and then she got married to Joe Cathy, and they lived in Salisbury, and they always lived in Salisbury as far as I know. And I remember when I was little, on Sunday afternoons, the family would sit at Leuberger Place. They sit on the front porch, and the people from often Joe and Anita would drive up and sit out there and talk, and it would collect a whole bunch of people. But I thought maybe you'd tell about how that porch was used.
Well, that was a big porch. It curved around both sides of the house, but on the this side where we had the swing fastened to the ceiling, we had all kind of chairs, and we just, in the summertime, we used it a whole lot. And back then, whole cars full of families would visit, and we'd sing a lot of times out there. In fact, everywhere the family went at home, if we're in the house, we'd gather around the piano. If we was on the porch, we sang together. There was always plenty of them to sing. I don't know whether any of us were very good or not, but we sang. And when we'd travel in the car, we always sang.
Leuberger Place was right across the Highway 29 from the train track. And tell about how that train track would, the train would come in the middle of the night or middle of the day. And
yeah, Leuberger Place was in front. Our yard was, I don't know how many feet, but it was a long way to the highway. And then you crossed the highway, and you went just a little way, and there was a railroad track, Southern Railroad. And of course they went over there night and day. The trains went by, and sometimes they'd even stall out there and take them a long time, and then make a big old noise and all that. But anyway, Anita had her friend from college they were visiting, and of course they were upstairs in the front room, we call the company room, pink room. And well, her friend had already gone to sleep, and I guess Anita was getting ready to go. Well, here came a train, a passenger train. They'd come fast, and boy, they'd kind of shake the house, and they'd blow that whistle. And well, anyway, her friend was asleep, and when that train came along, Anita said she sat straight up in the bed and said, "Oh my God, what's that?"
Well, I sure remember that train shaking the house a whole lot, and you had to get used to it if it wasn't going to wake you up.
We got used to it and never noticed it at all.
And when they were sitting on the front porch and the train came by and everybody was talking, everybody stopped talking while the train went past because you couldn't hear each other.
Not only that, they had coal for fuel, and of course there's a lot of coal, soot, all over everything. Always was.
Let's go on and talk about Aunt Lula. You mentioned that she was the good cook when she was what? The good cook when she was little.
Oh.
Can you think anything else about when you're growing up?
Yeah, Lula. She had a wonderful personality. You weren't around Lula much until you're crazy about her. And she could tell stories so good, and I always laughed because Ruth and me and Lula, we'd go to tell jokes. Well, Ruth would tell her joke. She got to the end and she forgot the point. And so, but Lula, you just tell her the point and she'd make up her own thing, and she'd make quite a story out of it. And I think she and Roy had dispositions kind of alike. Everybody liked them, but they didn't take care of their money. They never did all their lives, and I don't know, so generous. They were so generous.
Now Lula was an artist.
Yeah, Lula studied art at Meredith College, but in her 3rd year of college, in the summertime, she had to have a bad operation. She had 3 cysts in her stomach area, and they took that out. Well, she never did go back and finish at Meredith. And she, back then, some places you could teach without a certificate of 4 years of college. But she got a job down on the coast, but they were having money trouble, and I don't think they had school but maybe 6 months out of the year. But she roomed with a family that really looked after her and she liked a lot. And at that time, that's when she was helping Ruth to go out to college. So she had to take I don't remember what she made each month, but it wasn't anywhere close to $100 a month at that time. And they didn't have enough of money that they could pay him right at that time. So even after she came home, every once in a while, she'd get a little check from him until they got it all paid. Anyway, another tale that goes with that. At that time, we here on the farm were raising cotton and things like that, mostly for income. Well, it came cotton picking time right when school was starting. Well, you couldn't expect the kids, they had to stay home and pick cotton. So they'd start real early. I've forgotten just the dates and all. But you start real early and you go 6 weeks, and then you wouldn't have any school while they were harvesting the cotton and other things too, and then the school. Well, one time, see, Lula's friend that she met down there, stayed with at the coast, they were hard up for money too. So a couple of years she came up during those 6 weeks and taught there and stayed at our house. That way she could get a little money, you know.
Mm-hmm. Now Lula
had a nice singing voice. She sang well enough to sing at her friends' weddings and things like that. And Roy had such a beautiful voice too.
Now she painted, because a lot of people have her painting.
Oh, I forgot. I got off the track. At Meredith, that was her major, was art. And of course when she couldn't finish, well, back then it wouldn't have done any good anyway, because the schools were in such stress for money, they couldn't hire physical education teachers and art and stuff like that, you know. But eventually she went to Catawba, backwards and forth, stayed at home and went backwards and forth to Catawba and finished, got her A certificate. And she taught after that at New London, and that's where she met her husband.
But a lot of, still she made a lot of paintings that are,
oh,
you
yeah.
have on your wall here.
Oh yes, all along, whether she went to college or anything else. She drew pictures, you know, to hang in your house, decorate your house. Mostly it was flowers and vases and things of that kind. It wasn't portraits or anything like that. She never did go into that. But a lot of her friends still have pictures that she painted. We have a few, but not much.
So she married Otha Kroll, and they lived in New London, North Carolina.
And she ended up with diabetes and really had a terrible ending, because all those complications from diabetes, and Otha wasn't very good to her. He was scared his money was going to give out before he died. And, well, she just had, and at that, when she was kind of pretty bad, it's when my husband died, and I lived in Iowa, and I came home. She was really bad off, so I stayed with her a lot, and she went to all kind of different hospitals, like Winston-Salem, and I can't think now, but then eventually she ended up in a nursing home in Lexington, I believe it was, and that's where she died from complications of diabetes.
Let's go on to Etta Umber. And
well, I can't tell you a thing about that, because about Etta. But oh yeah, I can. I wasn't born then, but of course, Etta, when she was 4.5 years old, Ruth and King and Etta and May, I don't know. Anyway, all the kids were playing in the what ended up to be in Mama's bedroom at that time. Well, we had open fireplaces in every room, and even though it wasn't cold or anything, anybody want to throw something away, they just throw it in the fireplace. So it was a lot of papers and stuff like that just in the fireplace. And I'm telling it like King tells us, because he was just a few years old too, you know. But he said they were playing in there and in that room and running around and doing this and that and that. Well, somebody struck a match to some of the paper in that fireplace. Well, Etta got her clothes on fire. So, no grown-up was there. They were all in the back working, you know. So she went tearing to get to Mama in the kitchen, went through the dining room and through that little butler's can and to get to Mama. And I think Jesse or somebody hired help was working on the back porch, and they got her and rolled her over until they got the fire out. But she was burned very bad, and during the night she passed away at 4.5.
Now, you were just 3 years younger than Uncle King. And what was Uncle King like when he was little? It seems like he's been a carpenter for 70 years or more. Was he always making things?
Well, I don't hardly know what to say. But when we were kids and during the Depression and all, money was very short. But King and I, a lot of times we'd pair to take a little plot of land to maybe grow cotton or something like that, something that at the end we could have a little money. Of course, he had to do most of the work and all that. I just had my name on there, but and he had a big old strawberry patch one time. I think it was an acre. I'm not sure, because I don't know how much an acre is of strawberries. Well, when those strawberries came in, he hired the whole community to come pick strawberries. He'd pay them so much a quart to pay, or gallon, whatever it was, and he'd sell them to anywhere he could. He put him a little stand out on the highway. It had an umbrella over it, and anybody passing in the car, they'd stop and buy strawberries. And one time the train was stalled out in front of the house, and oh man, he'd go back and forth and make this big noise. Well, anyway, he was close enough for the, what you call him, engineer, for the engineer to motion for King to bring him some strawberries. So he took the engineer some strawberries.
Now, who was King named after?
Oh, King was named after Uncle Charlie King, who was a half-brother to my father.
Okay.
And all his life, they had, at his birthday, they would send him something real, real nice. And they gave him Uncle Charlie King's old-timey pocket watch. It was big and yellow gold, and to this day he has it, I suppose.
Now, I remember that somehow the family had
I have to tell you about Uncle Charlie King.
We're going to get to that later on. We'll go through all of those people.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know what was I talking about.
You were going to tell about Uncle Charlie King, you said.
Uncle Charlie King owned and operated a women's college in Charlotte. It was, back then, I don't know what the dates would be, but it was way before. You had to really be something for a woman to go to college. But that was training to the Southern Belles and so forth. It was very well known and all. And, well, eventually, the, and Aunt Anita, who is my dad's full sister, was the nurse at the college. And eventually, he sold it to the Presbyterian Hospital. And to this day, of course, they've added and added and added, but they left a marker in metal and all telling about all about Uncle Charlie King. And it's over there at the Presbyterian Hospital, if you can find it somewhere that you can read it.
Out around the front door in the flower bed.
Well, I don't know. I just don't know.
That's where it's at.
But since then, the Presbyterian Hospital has been a big, big, big thing, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember that somehow you had player pianos, and that Uncle King took the wood from those player pianos and made furniture.
Was years later. He was married when that happened. You want King's wife, Elizabeth Solomon Umberger. Her dad was sold furniture, and Kid Fritz was the name of it. But ever so often he'd go north where they had abandoned all those self-player pianos. They didn't want them anymore. So he'd get, I think they got them down by the train load. I'm not right sure. But at that time King was just, you know, just barely out of high school, but he was married, and his way of making a little money was to do those pianos all over, take all the self-player part out and fix it out nice, and then Mr. Solomon sold them. He'd go all up in the mountains and everything to sell those pianos.
As regular pianos?
Huh?
He'd sell them as regular pianos?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've forgotten now where we are.
Well, just talking about Uncle King and his skills. So.
Oh, well, anyway, King, he didn't like the underwear that you bought. They were told, man, he hated that underwear like you bought. They were out of cloth. That was before they were made out of knit. Well, anyway, it seems that our family, the boys, their thighs were big, and then bought stuff just wasn't comfortable on them. Well, that King, he got him some material, I think a lot. And he kind of made, I guess Mama helped him, but he made him a pattern. And he made himself a bunch of underwear that was comfortable. And he kind of took after Mama. Mama was a seamstress of the best sort, you know, but sometimes we'd give her something she didn't have quite enough to make anything out of it. But I'll guarantee you she'd make something nice out of whatever she'd use anything. Well, King's kind of the same way. He can fix anything. He don't throw anything away. He saves it, and and he's always got something to fix everything with.
Mm-hmm. That's wood and metal and
yeah.
parts.
He's a carpenter, and he'd do that on the side. And I remember one time, Evelyn was in the back of the house, and King came in from work with everything tied on the car. I don't know what, all kind. She says, "You just take that back right now. I'm not going to let you unload that here." Well, he did. And when he ended up making her such a nice closet down in the basement, a place to keep her thread and all her materials, well, that was nice.
Now, can you tell about his toenail? You remember his toenail? He'd let his toenail grow?
Well, yeah, he had real long toenails. I don't remember too much about it.
Oh, he wouldn't.
I couldn't understand how he could wear those long toenails and not hurt his feet.
Yeah, you'd say, "Show us your toenail," and he'd take his sock off, and that thing would be all curled under his toe. It was very impressive.
I don't think he does that now.
Right. No, after he got married to Evelyn, he had to stop. He built his own house.
Yeah, that was his trade. He had it was 9 hours every day was a carpenter's work, and that was hard work. But he build on the side. He built his own house while he was working 9 hours a day. He built his own house.
And this was in the early 60s, I think.
Well, this was when he had his second marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he had a son, Charles, all this time, but and his wife was so sick for so long, and Charles was just a little.
Let's see. He worked as a carpenter for a company for most, but he was also a private contractor. He was always in people's houses repairing things. I just remember you saying that he would be in the Cannon's house or whatever, making repairs.
Well, that was in his regular job.
Okay.
His regular job. His boss.
Who was that? Who did he work for?
Craven.
Craven.
Craven. I've forgotten his first name.
Yeah.
But you have to tell it, because I don't know any of those tales. I remember, yeah, I remember he was working in the bank. They had something there they wanted him to repair, so they had him to come way before banking hours. And it was, I don't know what it was, but he accidentally pushed the button, and the first thing he knew, the cops and everybody else was up there.
Just recently, King said to me, I mean, he's 90 years old, he said that he was still being called by people to add stuff in their house, and he says that it never is over, because whenever he finishes whatever they ask, they have something else.
Yeah, yeah, he was so good at repairing things, and he had after he retired, after his boss quit, he retired, then of course Jimmy King didn't have a job. But he's kept it up himself. People just call him to fix this and that and the other. So even he's 90 years old right now, there'll be some people that will call him to come and fix something.
And he goes, apparently. Okay.
Much to Evelyn's sorrow.
That's right. Let's go on to talk about Ruth. And everything that I've written down here, we already talked about. I don't know if you think of anything else about her nursing school. We talked about that, and about how
her
doing
disposition.
The house. Well, talk about that.
Well, Ruth has such a. Mama always said that Ruth, of all the families, she had the the best disposition. And well, even though she didn't go to nursing school anymore, she went to Radford College in Virginia. That's when the girls were paying their way during the Depression. Of course, she just went for 2 years, and she stayed up there and boarded with some of the family at Burke's Garden, some of the Griever family. And she taught up there I don't know how many years until she came back to North Carolina. I guess I'm trying to think why she quit teaching up there. I guess it's when she became engaged to Hal Plunk. She came back to North Carolina. Well, and then, I don't know, pretty soon after they were married, Hal stayed at home and, no, that's not right. She stayed at home and went backwards and forth to Catawba College like Lula did and got her A certificate to teach in North Carolina. And, well, off and on during her life, she has taught and had children in between time, and then there was quite a period along there when Hal was trying to get his business established, building houses and developing land and all that. Ruth taught school to kind of fill in with the money. I know Hal always appreciated that. He said, didn't know whether he'd make it or not if it hadn't been for Ruth teaching while he was getting his business started. But it ended up, he was very successful, and they had enough money to be happy with.
Well, the next daughter is Frances, but
there's something I want to tell you about Ruth and the piano. Well, all of us had to take music until we convinced our folks that were wasting money. But anyway, Ruth and I, we went down to Mrs. Kidd's house to take music. Summer and all, you know. We walked down there. They lived about the underpass down there somewhere. But it really didn't stick. It stuck with Ruth a little more than it stuck with Frances. Frances she couldn't learn to play the piano at all. But Ruth learned to play 2 songs. And I remember when she come home in the summertime from college and all that, you know, she played those 2 pieces. I just wonder if she can still play those or not.
Well, next one is daughter is Frances, but we already talked about you a lot, so
okay.
I wasn't going to bring up anything else there. And then there was Edith, the youngest.
There was Edith. She was about 1.5 years younger than me, but I cannot remember playing with her or anything. I don't understand it, but anyway, poor thing, she got the earache, and come to find out it was mastoid trouble in her ear. And at that time, Concord didn't have a hospital. If you had to go to the hospital, you went to the Presbyterian Hospital in Charlotte. And, well, anyway, she went over there and they operated on her ear, but she got blood poisoning from the operation. And she was in the hospital, I don't know how long, and Mama stayed with her day and night. And I can just remember she eventually died at 4.5 from that blood poison. Well, see, they know how to control blood poison today, so if they'd had all the medicine they got now, she probably was still living. I don't know whether I told back when you was telling about Roy, but the same thing happened to him.
Mm-hmm. Sure, you told.
And if they had antibiotics, he would have been all right.
Well, that completes looking at all the children of...
I want to tell you about the funeral. Now, I remember back then, you brought the corpse back to the home, you know, and you'd have people to stay up at night and stuff like that. But now I remember, at that time, there was a mud road to church, which our Mount Olivet Church was across the highway and across the railroad track. And then you had a red road to Mount Olivet Methodist Church. And when they carried her body from the house to the church, they didn't put it in the hearse. They had the pallbearers to carry it.
All that way.
I remember that part. This is something I forgot when I was telling about King or Ruth, either one. But King was a big tease. He was the biggest tease. He had to be doing something to somebody, tickling their neck or their ear or pinching them or something. Well, he used to tease Ruth. It was just terrible. Just one time after the other, and he would not quit till she started crying. And I remember time on the front porch in that round part, that a couple steps back there that went down. I remember Ruth come running through there, running around the house, and here came King with I don't know, a bug or a frog or something. And she was so scared to death of it. I remember that. He was doing something like that to her all the time. And for some reason or other, I think King, after he's grown, he's always been sorry about that. Because when Ruth was grown and married and had these children and all, he does everything he can think of to help them out. I think he's trying to repay Ruth for treating her so bad when she was growing up.
So what did King call Ruth when they were little?
Oh yeah, King couldn't see. Ruth was between King and I, and King couldn't talk plain when he was little, and so he's trying to say Ruthie, and he says Toofy. So he's 90 years old today, and he still calls Ruth Toofy.